Andrew Giles, this whole controversy surrounding the Speaker, Bronwyn Bishop, and her travel entitlements, what exactly does she need to detail?
Well, in the first instance, she's got to highlight what she was doing in Albury, in Brisbane, when she made these claims for the things. It's one thing to talk about secret meetings in much the same way as the helicopter is the big feature of the initial incident. But she's really got to explain why she thought these matters were appropriate and within entitlements.
But doesn't I wonder if she does provide these details, then she'll be within entitlements and there won't be a problem.
Well, I don't know about that. And let's not forget that at the moment, she, as the Speaker, ought to be the standard setter for the Parliament. And I think at one level it's very easy to be distracted by the farcical element of this. Again, the weddings, the secret meetings, the helicopter, when really it comes down to some pretty fundamental propositions about trust and how our politics can work. I mean, what's really concerning here is that we have the Speaker of the Parliament and the Prime Minister who seem blind to the fact that we are seeing a real palpable sense in the community that the whole political class is just out of touch with basic community expectations. That's something which has to be put right, and has to be put right now.
Well, how do you put it right? Because as I understand it, the system as it stands, if a parliamentarian wants to go on a private trip somewhere or a party political trip somewhere, all they've got to do is to create some sort of parliamentary business to justify the trip. And of course, that's very easy to do.
Well, there are two separate issues here, I think, Chris. Firstly, there's the question of how the entitlements arrangements are structured. And Labor has said we will look at any proposal to put right any uncertainty or concerns here. We'll look at any proposal. But secondly, I think it's also about just having senior politicians take responsibility for how the present system works and for upholding public confidence in it. And that's something we've seen no evidence of from this government.
But isn't the system in some ways working? That there are these allegations against Bronwyn Bishop. They have been made public. She's wearing a certain amount of opprobrium about that. Isn't that the sort of transparency sufficient? Well,
we are seeing that, but what we are not seeing is responsibility being taken or any sense of awareness of the discord or the discomfort and discordance between, I think, the public's expectations of how we as politicians should behave in respect to public funds provided to enable us to do our work and how we account for the expenditure of those funds.
Okay. Moving on, the ALP conference, national conference, was held over the weekend. Some progress made in installing a quota, a 50-50 quota for women in politics. Is the pressure now on the Liberal Party to follow suit?
Well, most definitely it is. As of today, I think we've got around 45% of Labor parliamentarians around Australia are women. The number for the coalition parties is about half that. And it has been heartening to see some positive responses from women coalition members like Sharman Stone and Kelly O'Dwyer. But it's also disappointing to see the institutional response from the coalition parties, and I think of WA in particular, to evidence no particular concern in seeing Conservative politicians look like the constituencies they represent.
You mentioned Sharman Stone. She's made the point, though, that it's not just impediments to women entering Parliament. Her point is, though, that many women just don't want to enter Parliament because it's so blokey. She points to question time, for example, and the amount of confrontation in the Parliament. Do you think that's a point, that there are women, talented women, who simply aren't interested in engaging in that sort of confrontation?
Well, one thing that Labor women have understood for a long time, and certainly the Labor Party has recognised since the early 90s, is that there is a relationship between structure and culture. And that's one of the reasons why Labor has pushed for, and Bill Shorten has led the push towards, equal representation. I think on the Labor side of politics, we understand that rooms filled with men tend to attract other men and push away women, as well as people from other backgrounds. And so in putting forward quotas, in putting forward ambitious targets, we're not just looking to drive women into public life, we're looking to change how public life and how politics works. That's something I'd urge Sharman to consider in light of her critique.
But there are far more women in parliaments now than there were a couple of decades ago. So do you think the culture has changed?
Well, on the Labor side...
in the parliament?
I guess, Chris, I've got the disadvantage of having only been in the parliament for 20 months, so I'm not an expert in how it's evolved. And I think the gender dynamic is a really important one, and I think it does make a difference in a room, whether the room is entirely composed of men or equally composed of men and women, as to how the dynamics within that room operates, how the power dynamics operates, indeed how people behave more generally. So, I would like to be part of a parliament that is equally comprised of men and women and is more broadly representative of the community. That's something the Labor Party is grappling seriously with and taken big steps towards over the weekend. The onus is on the government parties to take the same step.
So do you think having a female speaker, Bronwyn Bishop, has made the parliament a kinder and gentler place?
Well, I was very interested to hear Josh Frydenberg talk about her being the first female speaker. I wonder what my great friend Anna Burke would have to say about that. Or Joan Child, who was a Labor speaker, I think 30 years ago. Obviously, when you look at gender representation, having people in individual offices is really important. I don't think anyone can understate the importance of firsts, particularly when you think about the very recent first of Julia Gillard. But I think it's about the whole culture of the place, not just the position of any individuals.
OK, Andrew Giles, thanks for your time today.
Thanks very much, Chris. Great to chat.